This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So Haason Reddick and the Philadelphia Eagles are in a contract dispute right now. Haason Reddick wants to sign for a long-term deal, and he wants to stay in Philadelphia, but he wants a long-term deal. I think he's been living off of short-term deals for a very long time. And correct me if I'm wrong, Haason Reddick's about at that age where you really want to get a long-term deal, right? About 27, 28. I'll double check that. He's 29. So yeah, he definitely wants to have a long-term deal. And the Philadelphia Eagles are at this precarious spot to where they probably don't want to offer him a long-term deal. So they gave him permission to seek out a trade to find somebody who's willing to give him a long-term deal, which means that Haason Reddick is available. Given the fact that Haason Reddick plays edge and the Browns, one of the Browns' needs are edge rusher, there's been a lot of questions about if the Browns should pursue Haason Reddick. Would that be something that makes sense for them? And would that be something that makes sense for Haason Reddick as well? And I think the answer is pretty obviously no. The reason I think the answer is pretty obviously no are for a multitude of reasons. One, I think that Haason Reddick and Za'Darius Smith are similar level players. Now, I know Hassan is coming off an 11-sack season. He had 16 the year before. He had 11, 12. He's been a double-digit sack guy. But Za'Darius Smith has also been somebody who's pretty routinely been a double-digit sack guy in his career, or at least close to a double-digit sack guy, right? 10 sacks the year prior, 12 the year before, 13. He's done it multiple times. So I don't think there's a huge difference from him and Za'Darius Smith. I also think when we're talking about size profile and skill set, Za'Darius Smith is a much better fit next to Myles Garrett than Haason Reddick is. Haason Reddick is 6'1". He's more of a linebacker, like a smaller edge rusher than Za'Darius Smith is. Za'Darius is more of a true 4-3 edge. Now, that doesn't mean that Hassan can't do something in the 4-3. We've seen him do it there in Philly, but Za'Darius is better built for that 4-3 lifestyle because Za'Darius also has the size and the strength to go inside. He's also somebody who has the versatility, despite his size, to even play a little bit of stand-up linebacker, as we saw in Minnesota. So Za'Darius, to me, makes more sense than Haason Reddick. I also think that Za'Darius is not in a position where he could demand a long-term deal, or even if he is looking for a long-term deal. The fact is that he was at about $10 million for the Browns last year. His production dipped. He's over 30 or close to 30, as well as Haason Reddick, and that's going to make his value go even lower. I think the Browns can get Za'Darius Smith back easily, within $6 to $10 million. 6 being obviously the lowest that you'll probably get him, but 10 being the highest that you would have to pay for him. I think that bringing back Za'Darius on that number, to me, makes more sense and is a lot more attractive. The other reason why I think that makes more sense and is a lot more attractive is that if you're looking for a smaller edge rusher who's a little bit more twitchy, who you can put, kind of on the outside shoulder of Myles Garrett and use more as an athlete and maybe even stand him up every once in a while, well, that's what Obo Okoronkwo is on the roster for. And I thought Obo Okoronkwo did a great job of being that guy for the Cleveland Browns last year. He played well. I thought he was getting better as each game went on. I thought he earned some snaps there. I also think that the edge depth that the Cleveland Browns have is pretty underrated. I think Isaiah McGuire has showed some promise as a rookie, and I think as he matures, well, not matures, I don't want to make it seem like he's immature, but as he gets used to the NFL gut and grind and he gets that NFL shape into NFL shape, as it usually takes defensive linemen a couple years to get into NFL shape, I think he's going to do well as a prospect. I also think that Alex Wright is somebody who is showing signs of stepping up and being that guy opposite. And even if you lose Za'Darius, you feel fine with Alex Wright kind of anchoring down that other side. And then you have Obo in there. It's just, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to go after Haason Reddick. Like, it doesn't seem like there's a fit there. I think the Browns have other players that like to go after. Is Hassan a really good player? Absolutely. Am I going to complain if Hassan is on the team somehow? No. But is Haason Reddick, to me, worth not only trading for, but also giving a long-term deal? No, not at 29. I don't think that the Browns should do that. I would leave that for somebody else to do. I don't think it makes sense for the Cleveland Browns to do. And I also think when it comes to how do we get help from Myles Garrett, that age-old question, when it comes to answering that question, I think it's time that we rethink it a little bit, because conventional wisdom has been, well, how do you help a guy who gets double teamed a lot? You get another edge rusher who's really good that's going to force teams to not double team the dude that you want to not be double teamed. But see, offenses have caught up. They don't care who you put opposite of Myles Garrett. They don't care what you're going to do on that other side. They're still going to double team Myles Garrett, which sounds like a win. But what actually ends up happening is that not only does Myles get double teamed, but Dalvin gets double teamed. And yes, you're technically getting one-on-ones on the back end with your other interior defensive lineman and Za'Darius Smith. But since teams are so afraid of Myles Garrett, they're doing things like getting rid of the ball quickly or sealing Myles and rolling over Myles, right? Like, they're doing things to mitigate the pass rush anyway from the defensive line position. So no matter how many single teams that Za'Darius Smith gets, it really doesn't matter, because they're not really true single teams, because teams are doing everything that they can to make sure that no edge rusher can have an effect on the game. Even if that sacrifices the depth of their game plan, that's what they're willing to do. And since that's the case, I think you have to throw conventional wisdom out the room. I don't think this is about what's conventionally wise. I don't think this is about, oh, you can get a team to stop double teaming Myles Garrett. You're never going to get a team to stop double teaming Myles Garrett until you develop cloning technology, put Myles Garrett in that cloning bin, and get another full-grown version of Myles Garrett on the other side. That is the only thing that's going to stop teams from double teaming Myles Garrett. You could put anybody there, they're going to double team Myles Garrett. You can put TJ Watt on the other side, they're going to double team Myles Garrett. You could put Trey Hendrickson on that other side, they're going to double team Myles Garrett. You could put Micah Parsons on the other side, they're going to double team Myles Garrett. You could put Von Miller in his prime on the other side, they're going to double team Myles Garrett. That is the decision that NFL teams have made. They are going to double team Myles Garrett no matter what. It's like Vontae Mack, no matter what, double Myles, no matter what. That's the game plan that teams are on. And since that's the game plan that teams are on, trying to do things to prevent teams from double teaming Myles Garrett, it's kind of pointless. They're just going to double team Myles Garrett. You move them around, they're going to double team Myles Garrett. You move them to the other side, they're going to rotate, flip their protection, and double team Myles Garrett. If you move them to the interior guard, they're going to flip and have that guard and center double team Myles Garrett. They're just going to double team Myles Garrett. This is one thing we've learned, right? I thought with Za'Darius and a good defensive line around Myles, you will finally see that double team number go down. Nah, they just decide to double team Myles Garrett. That's how afraid that they are of Myles Garrett. He's the only edge that people do this stuff to in the NFL. Like, Micah Parsons gets doubled a lot, but that has more to do with how his position is played versus how they feel about him, even though he's still a really good player. I'm not trying to slight him in any way, shape, or form. It's just how they protect against Myles is completely different than anybody else in the league. So that being the case, you got to throw conventional wisdom out the window. Can't just keep going with what's conventional. Now you got to think a little bit unconventional. And it's like, hey, if they're going to double team Myles Garrett, no matter what, if you move Myles Garrett and you know that you're going to get the attention of 2 offensive linemen or an offensive lineman, a tight end, and a running back, you're going to get all the auxiliary attention to a protection to point it towards Myles Garrett, right? Whether that be an extra guard, whether that be an extra running back, whether that be an extra tight end, you know that whatever is left after the protection is definitely being allocated towards Myles Garrett, then you kind of have an advantage. It brings me to the Browns' success on blitzes. The Browns were the most successful team on blitzes in the NFL. They were 70% successful. I think the number 2 team was 63% successful on blitzes. To me, that screams something. And what that screams is it might be time for a little bit of an unconventional attack. I wouldn't be surprised if JOK ends up with a league lead in TFLs next year, and maybe the leading linebacker in sacks. It wouldn't surprise me if Grant Delpit has the most sacks of any safety next year, because how do you take advantage of a team that is dead set on double teaming Myles? You use your secret special missiles is what I'm going to call them, right? Because since these guys play off the line of scrimmage, but inside the box, and since both of these guys are exceptional athletes, very instinctual athletes, and good tacklers, you can have them on the opposite side of each other. They both pretty much play linebacker. Like Grant plays safety technically, but he's much closer to a linebacker than he is a cornerback, right? He's kind of in that Kyle Hamilton range of player. And since that's the case, you can have both of these guys on either side, and whichever side decides to overcompensate for Myles, you know that you're going to have some open lanes or some open opportunities to send delayed rushers like a JOK or Grant Delpit or whoever you want, and kind of shoot those guys through those gaps like heat-seeking missiles. That's what I think the Browns should consider in the draft and free agency. How do I get some guys who are just straight up heat-seeking missiles at that linebacker position? Yes, you're going to need run stuffers. Yes, you're going to need pass coverers, all that, but they're going to have a lane for guys who play similar to a Pat Queen, right? They have long arms, they can get off guys, and they're quick and instinctive, right? JOK is one of the best at this. We saw JOK make a leap, and we saw the dominance that JOK had in that Houston game in the playoffs, and that had a lot to do with the fact that teams were overcompensating for Myles Garrett. It allows him to have a lot of space, a lot of room for him to be instinctual. JOK last year had an average depth of tackle of less than 2 yards. If you don't think that's impressive, an average depth of tackle of less than 2 yards, Roquan Smith's was over 4 yards, and people think he's the best linebacker in the NFL. But my trolling of Roquan Smith aside, that's where JOK is special, making plays on the line of scrimmage. Look at his TFL numbers compared to what some consider to be the best linebacker in the NFL, Roquan Smith. Look at them TFL numbers from JOK to Roquan. I ain't even going to spoil it for you. Google it right now. I'll wait. Google the Roquan Smith TFLs versus JOK. I'll wait. I'll read a book or something. You know what I mean? I'll catch up on some reading. Yeah. Yeah. You saw him, didn't you? Yeah. Okay. So maybe the linebackers and a guy like Grant Delpit, and maybe you bring in another strong safety similar to how they had Ronnie McLeod, maybe that becomes someone who's more important. And it's about making teams open a gate, right? Because of how they're going to protect Myles, right? They're going to shift 2 over. They're going to rotate there, making them open that gate in their protection, and then sending a heat-seeking missile when that gate opens, or a guy who can anticipate those gates opening once they overcompensate the miles to get through. And I think that's going to be how the Browns create a ton of pressure in 2024. And I think that's going to be a very successful strategy for the Cleveland Browns. So yeah, no on Haason Reddick. I don't think it makes sense from an on the field perspective. Like, yeah, could Hassan do some of the things I'm talking about? Sure, but you already have JOK. You already have Grant Delpit. You already have Obo Okoronkwo. You have Za'Darius Smith. Well, you can get Za'Darius Smith back. You know, I don't think it makes sense for them. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.